to go until 2018 here in the U.S., but worldwide, the party is already in full swing. I'm Molly Line. You're watching The Fox Report. Here's Sydney, Australia, ringing in the new year. An estimated 1 million people coming out to see the fireworks. About half of them are believed to be tourists. And here's what it looked like in Malaysia. Thousands gathering at the Twin Towers in Kuala Lumpur. And Dubai is switching things up this year, ditching the fireworks for an LED light show. The display covering the world's tallest building. Let's go now to Brian Yennis, who is braving the cold out there in Times Square, right back here in good old America. Brian?
Hi, Molly. Happy New Year to you and everyone back home. You can see the crowds already behind me. These folks have been out here 1 o'clock, 12 o'clock in the afternoon. And, of course, we can see the security. Nothing but NYPD up and down. But take a look over here to my right. This is a sanitation truck, one of dozens of sanitation trucks that have created a perimeter around Times Square to prevent a vehicular sort of style of attack. Just some of the provisions that they've taken here in Times Square to protect this amazing event. There are over 1 million people here. Not only have they added the sanitation trucks, but also take a look at these buildings all up here, right? You've got over 1 million people braving the cold, and these...
Brian has been a stalwart out there braving the cold for several days now, bringing us all up to date about the extensive security that is going to be keeping everyone safe in Times Square, and we have him back. Back to you, Brian.
All right, guys. Yeah, so sorry about that. So we have the hotel up here, and what we have here is that they've got officers that are in those buildings to make sure that everything is okay, given what happened in Las Vegas. We also have K9 units, which are going up and down here to check. And if you come over here, too, you can see we've got 1,000 cameras that are all positioned here. You can take a look up here, looking at the entire event that's here. And you'll talk to, actually, you know what, we're going to come over here. We're going to talk to some of the folks, Molly, because it's been a very cold. You guys are from Texas, right?
Yes.
All the way from Texas.
Yeah.
What time did you guys get here?
Probably 1 o'clock.
1 o'clock.
Yes.
How are you guys staying warm?
We're not. We're cold.
We're dancing, moving, shaking, trying to stay warm here.
All right. Did you guys think it was going to be this cold? They have been talking about it, but...
Yeah, I didn't expect to feel it like this.
Can you explain it to the folks?
I can't really feel it right now because I don't feel much.
How many layers are you wearing?
4 on top, 3 bottom, 3 socks.
Wow. Is it worth it? You think it'll be worth it?
Yeah.
You realize you've got another 5 hours.
Yeah, that's not bad.
Okay. All right. You can see all the folks here, Molly, and they've all been waiting out here, obviously, for hours. As security, obviously, a top concern, but the NYPD says there's no specific credible threat to Times Square or to New York. They're just taking everything as a precaution. There's about over 6,000 police officers here in uniform protecting this beautiful event. This is over 1 billion people will be watching on TV as the ball drops.
Absolutely. Always exciting to see everybody bundled up there, heeding those warnings about just how cold it will be, including yourself, Brian. Thanks for that report. Enjoy the rest of the evening.
Of course.
All right, almost anywhere you live, weather is the major headline for tonight's festivities. Much of the U.S. is enduring this bone-chilling cold. Adam Klotz is live in the Fox Extreme Weather Center with more on that. Adam.
Hey there, Molly. Yeah, it's incredibly cold across the country. Fortunately, warm here in the studio. You're looking at temperatures around 12 degrees in New York City, but you're stretching across the entire country. Yeah, look, there's a spot where it gets really cold right there in the northern plains. These are your actual temperatures. But if you add in the wind chill, it feels even colder. What does it feel like? Getting down into the -20s, the -30s. Absolutely frigid. Now that's all settling into the Midwest off towards the east. These are your current wind chill temperatures, 13 degrees in Indianapolis. Running you here to New York City, 0. That is your feels like temperature currently. Now as we head through these overnight hours and eventually to that ball drop, we're going to see the actual temperature at 11 degrees or 10 degrees right in that range. The wind chill down to -2. And you know what? We aren't that far from it right now, sitting at 0. Here's how these numbers play out across this entire region, running you from right now into the early overnight hours. Look at that, -20 degrees in Chicago, -15 degrees in Indianapolis, -2, as we said, here in New York. And as we get into the new year, things aren't looking a whole lot better. Really throughout the entire first day of 2018, temperatures are going to be sitting there in the negative 15 to 20 to 30 in some places there in the Midwest and back into the Plain States, Molly. So bundle up tonight. And then, unfortunately, bundle up tomorrow and the day after that.
Absolutely. A great day to stay inside, cuddle up by the fire, and watch Fox News, your New Year's Eve headquarters. Join us through the early hours of 2018 as we ring in the new year with you, beginning at 8 p.m. Eastern. Ed Henry, Lucy Booth, and actor Dean Cain kicking off all the festivities, the countdown to 2018. And then at 10 p.m. Eastern, Kennedy and Jesse Waters ramp up the party with the All-American New Year. It is all live from Times Square right here in New York City. You can also take part in the fun on social media. Go to the hashtag Fox News 2018. And President Trump also celebrating his New Year's Eve in Florida, now gearing up for a holiday party with friends and family at his Mar-a-Lago estate. This after sharing lunch with Florida Governor Rick Scott earlier in the day. Steve Harrigan is live there on West Palm Beach, Florida. Steve, what has been the president's response to events in Iran?
Molly, the president paying close attention to the events in Iran. He's tweeted about it the past 3 days, several times today. Most recently writing on Twitter, Iran, the #1 state of sponsored terror with numerous violations of human rights occurring on an hourly basis, has now closed down the internet so that peaceful demonstrators cannot communicate. Not good. There are also recent reports coming out of Iran that cell phones have also been shut down in parts of the country as well, Molly.
All right. We know there's got to be a party. What about the party tonight?
Well, for the past 2 decades, the president has brought in the new year at his Mar-a-Lago private club. That's going to be the case again tonight with the First Lady, with family members, and with friends. A ticket for that event for a guest is $750. Judging by last year, there were about 500 to 600 people in attendance. 4-course meal, the traditional baked Alaska dessert, dancing, and a live band. So cocktail hour underway. The tent is out at Mar-a-Lago. Molly?
All right, Steve, thank you so much. Hopefully a little warmer there than it is in many other parts of the country. We appreciate it. The anti-government protests in Iran have turned deadly. 2 demonstrators were killed in overnight clashes. This as the Iranian president criticizes President Trump for supporting the protesters. Ellison Barber is live from Washington with more on all of this. Ellison, is the government still blocking social media?
Yes, they are, as you just heard a little bit from Steve there. As far as we know, the Iranian government continues to block access to social media apps like Telegram, which protesters have been using to coordinate and communicate. Iran's interior minister says social media is being used to promote violence.
All those who entered the scene in recent days and those who provoked it behind the scenes, their relations and links, those who misused cyberspace and spread violence, are absolutely known to us, and we will definitely confront them in due time.
Many say the social media restrictions are a clear attempt to stifle dissent. Telegram CEO said on Twitter that Iranian authorities blocked access to Telegram after the company refused to shut down peaceful protest channels. These protests began 4 days ago. Iranian President Hassan Rouhani stayed quiet publicly until today. In a speech, Rouhani said the people have the right to protest, but violence is not acceptable. Over 200 people were arrested Saturday at anti-government protests in Tehran. 2 people, according to government officials, died at another protest in the city of Dorud. Security officials said the protest was illegal and that the 2 deaths occurred during, quote, the clash. They also said, quote, no bullets were shot from police. Opposition groups dispute that. They say police and government security forces opened fire on protesters. They posted can be heard in the distance as people rush out of the crowd in Dorud. In one portion of one of those videos from Dorud, 4 or 5 people are running and clearly carrying an injured person away from the chaos. At another point, Molly, the video appears to show protesters bleeding from bullet wounds.
Have the protesters made any specific demands?
Yeah, they have. They want to see a new government. These protests began because of economic issues, unemployment, the rising price of basic goods. Things like eggs, chicken reportedly jumped in price anywhere from 30 to 40%. But now the protests seem to be about the system at large, about a government protesters see as corrupt.
What you see is very reminiscent of the 2009 uprising, but I feel it's far deeper than that and a lot more promising, because now on the top there is a big rift among the different factions of the regime. Each faction is blaming the other.
Right, and he is associated with an opposition group. In a statement, the opposition group in Iran said that they will accept, quote, nothing short of the removal of the Islamic regime and a new government. Molly?
It is about people seeking liberty, a brighter future for themselves. It is a riveting and important story. Ellison Barber, thank you for bringing us the details there from Washington. A new fallout over President Trump's decision to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital. The Palestinian envoy to Washington now being called back for talks about future relations with the U.S. This after the president's move sparked days of protests and clashes in the region. Connor Powell is in Jerusalem with more.
Molly, the new year seems likely to bring the possibility of more conflict and political unrest to the Middle East. 2018 starts with the militant group ISIS, largely defeated and barely clinging to a fraction of the territory it once controlled. But what happens next with the terror group is still very much a question. There are fears that ISIS will morph into a more traditional terror group, sending followers from Iraq and Syria to Europe or even the United States to launch attacks. The Trump administration has vowed to prevent that from happening. Meanwhile, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is once again front and center on the world stage following President Trump's unilateral decision to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. That move setting off violent clashes here in Jerusalem and the Palestinian areas, and demonstrations around the world. We'll be watching to see what impact, if any, President Trump's announcement has on the stalled peace process, and if any other countries follow the U.S. and announce their intention to move their embassy to Jerusalem. So far, only Guatemala has said it would. But it is Yemen that looks set to consume much of America's attention in 2018. The U.S.-backed, Saudi-led bombing campaign there to oust the Iranian-linked Houthi rebels has made a bad situation into a full-fledged humanitarian crisis. With tensions heating up between Iran and Saudi Arabia, Yemen could very well bear the brunt of it and spark a wider conflict in the region. Molly?
Connor Powell in Jerusalem, thank you. And right now, new details out of Houston about a scary scene from this morning, what police are saying about the man who had several guns inside his high-rise hotel room. Plus a fleet of officers responding to a call in Colorado, why authorities say those deputies quickly faced a very grave situation.
SWAT officers in the back of the car racing to the hospital. I've never, going as fast as they were. It was clear that there was something bad that had happened.
Houston man arrested earlier today after he was busted with several guns and ammunition in his hotel room. Police now say the suspect was holding those weapons there for safekeeping and that he had, quote, no unlawful intent. The man is facing assault and trespassing charges, however, after authorities reportedly first tried to arrest him for intoxication. In Colorado, a deadly shooting leaves one sheriff's deputy dead and 4 others injured. Officers came under fire after responding in the early morning hours of the day. The Douglas County Sheriff says that 100 rounds were fired in all. They are comparing the scene there to an ambush-style attack. Will Carr is live now in our West Coast newsroom with the details. Will?
And Molly, this all started with a 911 call. The report, a man might be having a mental breakdown. That led deputies to an apartment in Highlands Ranch, Colorado, about 15 miles from Denver. And when they walked inside, the suspect unloaded. Ultimately, 4 deputies were injured. One deputy, Zachary Parrish, was shot and killed. 2 civilians were shot as well. The gunman exchanged fire with law enforcement and was killed by members of a regional SWAT team. Authorities say they're very familiar with the man, and while his motive is unclear, at this point, we've learned that he used a rifle in the attack and evidently was waiting for the officers to arrive, including Deputy Parrish, who is 29 years old.
Spent some time with his wife. I can't tell you how difficult it is for a leader to sit down with the spouse of an officer who was killed in the line of duty. They had many hopes and dreams, and he was doing his job. He was doing his job well, and his life was taken from us this morning.
Deputy Parrish was married and had 2 young kids. Earlier today, a procession led his body from a hospital in Littleton, Colorado, to the medical examiner's office. President Trump weighing in on Twitter, stating, "My deepest condolences to the victims of the terrible shooting in Douglas County at D.C. Sheriff and their families. We love our police and law enforcement. God bless them all." 39 members of law enforcement have now been killed in the line of duty this year. That's lower than 2016, but obviously still too many. Thankfully, the other victims in today's shooting are expected to recover, and to help all of the families impacted today, a fallen officer fund has been set up by the Douglas County Sheriff's Office. You can check that out on their website or on social media. Molly.
Thank you, Will. Our thoughts go out to the deputy's family. Can President Trump bring Democrats to the table as he looks to advance his agenda in 2018? Why bipartisanship may become a necessity. Plus, marijuana activists gearing up for a landmark day in the state that passed the first medical marijuana law more than 20 years ago.
We're seeing an increasing number of Americans agree that it's time to regulate marijuana, take it out of the underground market, have people pay taxes on it like they would for any other product.
As many as 36 states reporting widespread cases of the flu. The virus usually reaches its peak in February. Experts blame cold temperatures and what appears to be a less effective vaccine this year. The infection is reportedly being blamed for more than 30 deaths so far this season. Symptoms include fever, chills, muscle aches, fatigue, coughing, and congestion. New Year's Day marks a new era in California, as some stores will be allowed to legally sell recreational marijuana. The state has given licenses to about 6 dozen businesses so far. Retailers are anticipating a major shift.
The last few days have been a little bit crazy. As you can see, a lot of our medical cannabis patients are coming in, stacking up before the taxes go up in the new year.
I think it's going to be exciting. It's going to be crazy. It's a complete change for the industry right now.
California was the first state to pass a law allowing medical marijuana. That was more than 20 years ago. President Trump set to host Republican leadership at Camp David this week. The party looking to build on the momentum from passing tax reform. But the 2018 agenda may require more cooperation from Democrats. Garrett Tenney has more.
Republican leaders have a long wish list for 2018, including a couple of items that may be able to get bipartisan support. Foremost among those is rebuilding America's infrastructure. The White House tells us they are looking at about $200 billion in federal spending to rebuild roads, bridges, rails, and waterways. Democrats want to bump that funding up to about $1 trillion. Another hot-button issue the White House wants addressed is immigration reform, including DACA. Democrats want to permanently protect those who were brought into the country illegally as children, and President Trump has said he's willing to do that in exchange for an end to both chain migration and the immigration lottery system, as well as his border wall, which Democrats say is a non-starter, but Senator Lindsey Graham is still optimistic.
We need the wall, not a complete 2,200-mile wall. We need border security. You marry that up with the DREAM Act. There's a deal to be had on immigration.
Republicans like House Speaker Paul Ryan are also eyeing a number of issues that aren't expected to get much Democratic support, including reforms to entitlement and welfare programs, which many Democrats consider untouchable.
The other piece of this is, I think, what we're going to fight against, and that is the privatization of Social Security. It's going to be the diminishment of Medicare and Medicaid. We know that's on the block for our Republican colleagues in the House.
Next weekend, President Trump will hash out the GOP's top priorities for 2018 with House Speaker Paul Ryan and Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell in a meeting at Camp David. Molly?
Garrett Tenney, thank you. Democrat Doug Jones is set to be sworn in as Alabama's next senator after defeating embattled Republican Roy Moore. So are Democrats building momentum ahead of the 2018 midterm elections? We will examine that. Plus, Fox News has you covered right here on New Year's Eve. The fun kicks off at the top of the hour, but first, a sneak preview live from the heart of New York City. Stay close.
It's so much fun here. We met new friends and yeah, it's just cool. We're dancing and singing, and that's what makes us warm.
All All right, with a new year comes a new set of political challenges, something that is clearly on President Trump's mind as he tweets about the 2018 midterm elections and the very serious implications that they could have in his presidency. Hello, I'm Molly Line, and this is the Fox Report. President Trump has already seen Democrats score two major wins in 2017. Ralph Northam won the governor's race in the purple state of Virginia, while Doug Jones claimed Alabama's empty Senate seat in that unusual race. And with history favoring the minority party, the president is wondering what next year just might bring. Tweeting, "Why would smart voters want to put Democrats in Congress in 2018 election when their policies will totally kill the great wealth created during the months since the election? People are much better off now, not to mention ISIS, the VA, judges, strong border, Second Amendment, tax cuts, and more." Instant analysis. Now let's bring in Eddie Scarry. He's the media reporter for the Washington Examiner. Thanks for being here. Happy New Year.
Of course. Happy New Year.
You know, kicking things off with our baseline, the Democrats need the 24 seats to take back the House. They need 2 to get the Senate. Historically, of course, the party, it can be tough for whichever president is in power for their party to really have much success as they head into the midterm election. So what can Republicans do to push back against what some think will be this blue wave?
Right. It's interesting to talk about because whether there's a blue wave or a red wave again, we don't really know, simply because we have President Trump, this person who's a total wild card. We don't know what he can do before the actual election in the midterms. So it's hard to say. I mean, I know that, like you said, history is on Democrats' side as far as picking up seats. We would typically see that in a typical atmosphere, but right now we don't have that. So it is really hard to say, and I think that President Trump doesn't make it any easier for either party.
You know, really, people really do care about those pocketbook issues. And something in his tweet really caught my eye. He said, "The policies will totally kill the great wealth created during the months since the election. People are much better off now." That, of course, harkens back famously to Ronald Reagan's line, "Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago?" And, you know, that really is what people talk about when you go out to the polls and you ask them why they're voting the way they are. It has a lot to do with jobs, the market. If the market is still doing well and tax reform does end up putting money in people's pockets and they see that money starting in February, will that mean good news for Republicans?
Right, and that can actually be a double-edged sword. For Republicans, that's a good thing, obviously, if they feel like they have crafted policies that have benefited voters. On the other hand, you can see some complacency from voters in that case. You might see voters who say, "Oh, well, I'm doing pretty good. I'm not angry. I might not go out and vote." And that would be among Republican voters, whereas you might have Democratic voters who say, "I still don't like the president's attitude. I don't like his tweets. I don't like the things he's been saying while in office, and we're still going to go ahead and vote in that way." And they may have the energy on their side. So that, again, it is a double-edged sword.
All right, in the Senate, Democrats are defending 25 seats. 10 of those are in states that the president carried in 2016. And there were some surprises back in 2016, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, for instance. So that's where the toughest races may be. And the map at least offers some favoritism to Republicans in that some of those states can be red-leaning. I mean, is that where the biggest competitions will be? And should we keep our eye on the Senate as far as a potential for Republicans holding on to power?
Right, we do have to keep our eye on the Senate. That's the most important. There's 2 seats, I think, that Democrats have to take in order to overtake that House of Congress. But it's leaning towards Republicans. It's in their favor right now, which is good for President Trump. He's hanging on to a very, very slim majority. I think Vice President Pence has had to come in and break the tie several times now. Do they want to keep going in that direction? I don't know. But the best thing they can hope for is President Trump going out campaigning and them being in sync in a lot of ways with their campaigning. I think, you know, what the race in Alabama, the Senate race in Alabama with Roy Moy's loss, that showed us everything we need to know, which is you can't take anything for granted.
That's true. And years ago in Massachusetts, we had a similar thing happen when Scott Brown won the Senate race there. Any party that might be complacent or think things are an easy win, it may not be the case. And here we have this unconventional president. Speaking of this unconventional president, could he be a major factor in if some of these representatives, some of these congressmen or senators hold their seats, lose their seats, and if seats are picked up? How big of a role will the president play?
Oh, he's going to be everything. He will be the role. And I think that, you know, you can go back to President Obama back in 2010 when there was this massive wave of Tea Party Republicans that came in, and the reporters asked him afterwards, do you think this was a referendum on your agenda? And he said, no, I don't think so. We may see the same thing happen with Trump, but I don't know. Again, I think that this is a total wild card. We've never seen anything like this before. So we're just going to have to wait and see.
Yeah, the president cannot be caged, especially when it comes to Twitter. And when it comes to Twitter, it can be very unpredictable. And also, anything can happen as we get closer to the midterm elections. I mean, a lot of things can change as far as public policy are concerned, and also just national events. So is it really just too early to predict which way any wave could go?
Right, and that's the thing, is things turn on a dime. They turn on events, and an event these days is a tweet. The president's tweet, it makes a complete event out of everything, and it can turn everything. It can run a news cycle for a week or 2 weeks. So when it comes to President Trump, we really don't know, and that's the thing. He's someone who's eager to seize on moments, particularly when you think they're getting dull. There's a new surprise, there's a new tweet, and that is, I think, coming up into the next election, when it comes down to the final weeks, you're going to see him taking advantage of Twitter. That's my guess, and that's, I think it's a pretty safe one.
Eddie Scarry, thank you so much for joining us here on this final day of the year. Have a wonderful 2018. Happy New Year to you.
Thank you.
All right, well, for the first time in years, Christians in the Middle East persecuted by ISIS are able to spend Christmas at home. And much of the thanks goes to one incredible 13-year-old boy and his family. Lauren Green is here in our New York City newsroom with this story.
13-year-old Noah fingers the melted marbles he collected from what was left of his family's burned-out home in Iraq. Speaking through an interpreter, he explains that it was all that remained after ISIS terrorists attacked their Christian community just east of Mosul, burning their homes, parish churches, and religious materials and artifacts.
They told us to flee from Carmelis, and there were very big crowds in traffic with cars, and they were shooting everywhere. We were all scared.
The family of 8 has spent the last 3 years as refugees. Noah's father holds back tears remembering the Christmases before the dark days.
We used to celebrate Christmas all together. I used to buy new clothes for the children and make food inside the house for all of us.
Now that ISIS has been scattered, Noah and his father and their family are getting the best Christmas present ever, celebrating the holiday in their home in Iraq for the first time in 3 years.
We need to move these families back, especially at Christmas.
Open Doors USA has brought Noah and his father to America to be the face of Christian persecution, to convince politicians and country leaders to help them and others resettle in their native land. They presented a petition to the UN Secretary General, signed by more than 800,000, and also met with Vice President Mike Pence.
These are people who are Christians in a community which was historically Christian since the time of Christ. They still speak Aramaic, the language of Jesus.
For Noah, it's not enough that he gets to be home for Christmas.
I am addressing this to all the kids of my age here in the States to put on their mind. There are many children in Iraq without parents. I'm asking them to pray for all the children in Iraq.
The latest numbers show the dire situation. According to a study by the Knights of Columbus, there were once 1.5 million Christians in Iraq. Today, that number has been reduced to around 250,000. In New York, Lauren Green, Fox News.
A stowaway passenger forcing some folks to rebook their holiday flights.
We hear any tweets, though, I'm afraid on the taxi app we have to come back.
How a rogue sparrow proved to be a major headache on a plane. Plus, conservatives looking to defeat a Republican governor who they say has betrayed their values and broken his promises.
We would have term limits in this state if I was in charge. I am not in charge. I'm trying to get to be in charge.
All right, a small bird, wreaking havoc on a Delta flight from Detroit to Atlanta. It was spotted flying into the plane during boarding. Passengers sat through an hour delay while the crews tried to find it. They eventually gave up. They departed for Atlanta. About an hour into the flight, the captain comes over the intercom saying the bird had reappeared and it was going crazy in the cockpit. That, of course, forced the plane to head back to Detroit, where they finally found the bird and safely removed it. Illinois Governor Bruce Rauner facing an uphill battle towards re-election as a growing number of conservatives accuse the Republican of betraying their values. Mike Tobin has the story.
Illinois voters recently got a curious statement from their governor.
I am not in charge. I'm trying to get to be in charge.
A wealthy rookie in politics, Rauner has had a rough first term. His statement acknowledges that the Speaker of the Illinois House dominated him. Democrat Mike Madigan has held the Speaker's gavel longer than anyone in U.S. history. The two-year budget standoff was largely seen as a showdown between Madigan and Rauner, and the governor lost. Rauner caved on all 44 points he promised in the campaign. Even the call for a tax cut became a state record for a tax increase. When the standoff resolved, Illinois still had one of the highest unfunded pension obligations in the nation. Critics jumped on Rauner's first national interview with Bret Baier because it appeared he had one answer for almost everything.
Our immigration system is broken. We have a broken budget situation in Illinois. So much of our Affordable Health Care Act is broken.
Rauner signed a bill preventing police from detaining aliens based on their legal status. Critics call it a sanctuary state law. He also signed a bill funding abortions for state employees and low-income women. All that earned him a front page of the National Review, labeling him the worst Republican governor in America. And now Rauner has a challenger for the primary.
He implemented Chicago Democrats' social and economic agenda instead of a conservative reform agenda.
As for Democratic challengers, the top of the pile is another newcomer to politics, J.B. Pritzker, an heir to the Hyatt Hotels fortune. Pritzker ties Rauner to Donald Trump and all the problems in Illinois.
He has the nerve to look you in the eye and say, I'm not in charge. Don't blame me, he says. I'm just the governor. I'm not the one running things.
I pressed Governor Rauner on why Illinois conservatives should vote for him if Speaker Madigan really is running the show. His response was that he beats Madigan some of the time. In Chicago, Mike Tobin, Fox News.
It's almost party time in New York City. Folks are braving what is expected to be a 0-degree wind chill to see the ball drop in Times Square. Ed Henry, Lisa Booth, and Dean Cain are already out there in the freezing cold. Oh, man,
That's right.
It looks cold out there. You guys are bundled up, though. You managed to look great. Ed, what is it really like out there to be part of that excitement, to be there that early? You got the great seats. You actually get to sit down, which is great.
Yeah.
And how many layers are you guys wearing? Confess.
Well, Molly, I think I'm on 5 layers up top, 3 down below. Everybody else is like that as well. Lisa and I have been talking about this, Dean as well. We're just going to have fun tonight. I mean, I think that's the key, right?
Absolutely. I don't know if anyone has seen Chris Farley, but I feel like fat guy in a little coat. If I move my arms like this, they're going to break. Also, I'm having a little bit of technical difficulty, so I'm not hearing, which is surprising because I think I'm the youngest person out here right now.
Yeah, and her hearing's going. It's beautiful out here. I'm so excited to be out here. It's my first time I've ever seen the ball drop.
Me too. I know. I'm so excited.
You can see it right there, and it's electric. It's
12,000 pounds up there of Waterford crystal.
I would like that in my house.
There's going to be 3,000 pounds of confetti at midnight. So we're just going to have so much fun. We haven't done this before, but obviously security, Molly, is a big deal. Fresh on the minds of the NYPD here. Think about what happened on October 31st, that tragic terror attack on the bike path in Lower Manhattan. 8 people killed, more than 10 people injured. More recently, December 11th, we had this subway bombing right here in Times Square. Thankfully, nobody killed. But you've got 6,000 to 7,000 NYPD officers, and Dean and Lisa, we've seen them out in full force. They're ready to go.
Well, and we've been talking to them all night, and they are all so incredibly nice. Here to serve, happy to serve, and happy to keep us safe. So we've really enjoyed talking to them along the way and thanking them for keeping us safe here tonight. So we're very thankful for their service and for everyone serving at home who's watching. So thank you.
Yes, definitely thank you. I'll tell you what, the security here, I feel pretty safe.
I feel very safe.
My son is here with me. I wouldn't have brought him if I didn't feel like it was safe. But even just getting here to Times Square, it took us 30 minutes and 6 layers of going through stuff. These guys are doing their job and doing it well.
Yeah, I saw the long lines of folks trying to get into Times Square just on my walk over today. Lots of, dogs out there, and the NYPD, New York's finest, everywhere. It was great, and everybody was in a great mood, and people were shaking the hands of the officers as they were walking by, thanking them for keeping all of us safe and for protecting everyone heading there to kind of really stick it out for hours to go. Still hours to go. I'm surprised you guys aren't huddled together for warmth like penguins.
In a minute. We're going to do that.
What's the craziest thing you guys have seen so far? You've got hours to go till midnight, but what have you seen so far?
Well, Dean mentioned 6 layers of security. We've got 7 or 8 layers of clothes. So that's bigger than security tonight. You know, I was asking some people when I first came out, and I said, why are you out here? They've been out here since noon or earlier, bundled up. It's with the wind chill. They say it's going to be lower than 0. And one young girl screamed out, I want to see Nick Jonas. And so, I mean, look.
There you go.
It takes all kinds.
I want to see Nick Jonas.
I want to see Nick Jonas.
Everybody's got a dream,
right?
Yes.
But, you know, I mean, this is something that we have all watched from home growing up. So it is such a special moment to be able to be here. It is such an honor for Fox to have us be a part of this. So we are all so excited. We're already having so much fun, and it's not even 8 o'clock. So.
Yeah, more than 1 million people there. Of course, everyone watching at home as well. We'll be watching tonight to see when it all happens. You know, Ed, you said something earlier today about White Castle coming in to feed the officers.
We're trying to get that as well. We haven't gotten it yet. There was a truck that pulled up for the NYPD right before my live shot earlier, and they were giving out hot chocolate. They had hot coffee. But then some of the officers said, wait a second, they're elbowing me, and White Castle burgers showed up. Dean, you weren't here yet. We could have gone crazy on that, but
I've already had a cheeseburger for the night. That was my fuel.
You got to feed the Army, Molly. That's the key. Feed the Army. And these NYPD officers, brave men and women in blue, we're thinking about them. And think about what happened today in Colorado.
Yeah,
one deputy killed, several shot. These officers are on the front lines. They don't always get the credit they deserve. It's not just on New Year's Eve. It's all year round.
And they've been doing it with a smile. And as I mentioned, everyone that we have interacted with has been so friendly, so helpful, so nice, and happy to be here. And we're so thankful for them.
No question about it.
And,
all right, Molly.
You know, it's not just about the security. They're also, you know, putting up with enormous crowds, trying to ensure that everybody's having a great time without making it scary for families. You know, when I was walking there today, there are lots of kids out in the city. It's a great time to be in New York, and everything's still sparkling. The Christmas lights are still out. You know, the crowds are going to be big. They know they're going to be big, and they're ready, of course. You know, you guys look amazing. You have hours and hours to go. Are there any surprises later tonight that we can expect as the hours wind on?
It wouldn't be a surprise if we told you, but I got to say, it's already been announced that Neil Diamond will be singing. Fox brought him out. Neil Diamond is going to do Sweet Caroline late in the evening before midnight.
Right?
Yeah.
I know, everyone's lucky because we were singing and dancing before we went live. So
just to stay
fortunately
warm.
for the ratings and for everyone's ears at home, you didn't catch us doing that. So.
Dean.
Unfortunately, can't go to the tape.
Sweet Caroline.